Okay, so in this project what we're going to do is create a painted metal where the metal is exposed, but there's kind of a distinct height difference between the two, like this here, which is the end product of our tutorial. So you can see that there is kind of an edge there where we've got our height. We're going to add in rust where that height kind of starts, and once we've done that, we'll save that as a reusable smart material, so you can use it time and time again by making just a few changes, and then we'll add a bit over the top of that to make it look nice. So I hope you're enthusiastic. I hope you're going to enjoy this very much, and I'll talk to you when I start in the next section. So talk to you then. Right, so let's get cracking on this. So we'll close the splash screen and start a new project. So it's File and New, and then we'll select our model. I'll go for this little military box here I've got here. I'm going to set my dock resolution to 2048, and I'll leave my normal map at DirectX. You can go OpenGL if you wish, and then we'll click OK. Right, so we need to bake out our maps first, so let's do that. So under texture set settings, we'll go to the little box with the cross through it and bake our maps. I'm going to take out my ID, and then I'm going to adjust my occlusion and curvature. So occlusion, this one is going to be way too high, so I'm going to bring that down to maybe 0.13. and I'll take the secondary rays up for greater accuracy. If your machine isn't all that powerful, then feel free to reduce that down so it speeds the process. And curvature, I'll go secondary rays will go up, and I'll use my normal default of about 0.5 for my sample radius. So let's bake out our textures, then we can have a quick look at them to see whether they're suitable. So under material, let's look at ambient occlusion, and that's quite nice. It's occluding in, but it's not occluding too far. Might be a little far actually, but I think it's tolerable. And let's have a look at our curvature. Yeah, we've got some nice sort of defined lines there, and that's pretty good. Okay, so once we've got the maps baked, we're ready to start on our texture. Let's switch this back to material, and in the layers I'm going to delete this default paint. We're going to set up two folders first, and these folders are going to contain our painted layer, or rather our paint material, and then we're also going to create another folder, and this will be our metal. I've just created those the wrong way around, so that's not a problem. I'll just grab that and drop it underneath, so that paint is on top and metal is above. Sorry, paint is on top and metal is below. I know, I'm old. Okay, so for the metal, I'm just going to find a steel in here. So in our materials library, just put the steel in there, in the filter, and drag and drop that onto the folder. You should see that that goes quite nicely. It's a bit chunky I think, so let's just increase the UV scale a little bit. Perhaps one more. There we go. And do I have a roughness? Yes, I'll take the roughness up just a touch. It's been through the walls a bit, this one. And on our paint layer, I'm going to start off with a plastic material. So I'll drag and drop that onto the paint layer, which will then completely obscure it, which is fine. That's exactly what we want it to do. One thing to note is that our normal and height information from the steel is coming through, and you might not want it to. So we're going to have to deal with that, and we also need to create some masks to blend them together, and we'll do that in the next video. So our first trick is we want to have the normal from the steel layer obscured by the normal on the paint layer. And to do that, what we need to do is just add a couple of things. So on the plastic matte pure, which I'm going to rename to paint. There we go. We're going to add a normal map to this function. So it's adding a blank normal map with the normal at the 0 point, so it's neither coming out nor going in, etc. And you'll see that that's done absolutely nothing, which is terrific, but not what we want. So what we need to do is change the way these normal maps interact with each other. So we've got our folder below with the normal map, and we've got this normal map, and their blend properties mean that they're kind of adding together. So what we need to do is select our normal channel, and you'll notice that we've got NMDT on our lists here, on our blends, and because this is in a folder, I need to change this on the folder level. So I'm going to change that and convert it to normal. Now that's nothing to do with the normal, a normal layer. It's just a normal blend method. And you'll note that when I did that, that completely obliterated what was below it. It's still there, we can still use it, and when we mix these materials to expose some of the metal underneath, it will have that information. If I go to the normal view, you see it's completely blank with the paint on, and if I turn it off, you'll see that it's got some normal detail in there. Okay, so that's overriding the normal layer, and when we come back, we'll start to create a mask set to blend these two together to get some holes and some wear and scratches and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'll talk to you then. Right, so let's add some masks now. So what I want is a mask on this top paint layer, and this time, unlike usual, I'm going to add a white mask. So the white mask is going to obscure everything. Wherever white is, it's going to be the paint layer, and wherever black is, it's going to be the metal layer. So to that, we'll start off by adding a generator, and on that generator we will perhaps go with, where is it, metal edgeware. Okay, now you see that comes in kind of the wrong way around, so I'm going to invert it, and that's a jolly good start. We can adjust our options down here, our wear level, so we can increase it, give it a bit more character. We can increase the contrast to sharpen up those edges. We have our grunge amount, which we can really increase, so it's really messed up. And we have our grunge scale, which I'll bring down. There we go. I know that actually I'm doing this on a blue box. I didn't really mean to be doing that. Let's go and change this colour out for a kind of olivey green. Somewhere around there, I think. There we go. Okay. So now that we've done that, what we want to do is recreate this mask at all of the levels above it. There are no levels yet because we haven't put them in, but we want to use it and manipulate it and change it and use it to add some depth. We want to add some rust and maybe a little colour to blend together. So to do that, we need to have an anchor point. So if I right click on the filter and select from the bottom add anchor point, and that's come and called itself paint mask. You can rename it, of course, just double click. Paint mask seems perfectly reasonable, so I'll leave it as it is. So this anchor point, anything below it, is going to allow us to then reference other layers. And what we'll do in the next one is we'll add a new layer, which will be our height layer. We'll reference this mask and then change it to get some really nice effects at corners. So I will talk to you in the next video. Okay, so now we want to add some height where there is paint on our model to separate them so it's not a super thin layer. So let's do that with a new layer. So let's click new fill, and we should have a new fill at the top then, and it will all come in white. But I only really want the height mask on this, or the height option. I'm going to turn that up quite a long way so that I get a good idea of what's going on, and then we'll add a black mask to that. Now underneath this one we're going to add a fill layer, and in that fill layer we're going to reference our anchor point. So if I click on this grayscale here, it gives me a tab with my anchor points in. So these anchor points, you know, you could have more than one anchor point in a project. So I'll click that, and you'll see it applies then over the entire area, so everything's thick. And what we want actually is to kind of curl the edges a little bit. So I want the inside to be kind of flat, but where it's coming to the edge of the paint and the cracks, I want it to curl up. So let's add in a new layer here to deal with that. So if we right click and add filter, click on the filter, we'll add a high pass, and immediately you'll see that kind of distorts everything, because it's run a high pass on our filter and really changed how it looks. So it's kind of puffing out the metal as well as the paint, and we don't want it to do the metal. So for that, what we can do is take our fill layer and use it as a mask above. And if I change to the mask view here, you'll see what's going on. You'll see there's kind of white and grey all over. Where our metal is showing, I want it to be black. I don't want to see it at all. So right click, duplicate layer. Where is it? It's here somewhere. Duplicate effect rather, and then drag that above your high pass. You'll see now that it's just back to where it was, but that's just because we need to change our blending method, and we'll change that to multiply. And now we've got black where our metal should be, and we've got grey and white where our paint is. And if I go back to the material view, we should see that reflected. So because I've got it at such a high strength, it's quite prominent. So let's click on the layer and just take that down until it's a bit more reasonable. Somewhere around there, I think. Okay, so we can adjust our high pass filter. Let's go back to the mask view. So we have a radius to work with. So the more I crank it up, the more extreme our thing will be. So I'm going to take it up a little bit. I might just look at it in the material view here to see what happens. So as I go really far, you'll see it makes something of a difference. I'm looking at this area, it's showing it up quite nicely. So you'll see it's nothing, and now it's kind of curling at the edges. If I go right to the other end, it kind of flattens out again. So just adjust to how you want it to look. Okay, so I think we're doing all right now. So what we'll do in the next video is we're going to add some dirt and rust between the paint and the metal. So I'll talk to you in that video. Okay, so now we want to put some rust on the metal. And for that, let's actually just rename this height so we don't lose what's what, and we'll add a new fill layer above that. And to this fill layer I'm going to add a black mask, and once again I'm going to add a fill. So the fill is going to reference our anchor point again, but at this point it's the wrong way around. It's inverted. I've left the colour on so you can see. So above that I need to invert this filter, so or this fill layer rather. So it's right click and we can add levels, and it's a question of just swapping the black and the white on the bottom. There we go. So again, this is not really very helpful because there's no wear in it. So we're back to using our high pass filter. So it's right click, add filter, and then high pass, and it's going to add in some variation. We can change our radius and do all sorts of things to get that a bit better. But you'll notice it's now spreading across everything as it did last time. So we need a copy of our fill layer to mask out the paint. So I'll right click and duplicate that effect and drag it above the high pass, and this one definitely needs an invert, but on this we have an invert option. So well, we have a filter option, a levels option rather. So let's just switch those around. Okay, and then change our blend to multiply. There we go. So it's a little bit fine. So I'm going to just go and have a look at the mask itself to see if I can refine it a bit more to make it better. So let's have a look at our high pass. So if I go down it's all kind of grey, if I go up it gets a bit white a bit quickly, but it's okay, we can adjust that elsewhere. So above my fill here I'm going to right click and add some levels, and then I'm going to change my positions at the top black to somewhere around half. So now I've got some very black bits and I've got some white bits transitioning through grey to the black, and oh, somebody outside, and we can adjust our grey level to get some even finer transitions. Okay, so that was all very exciting, but just getting the mask ready. So now I'm just going to go back to my material layer, select on the material, and then under our materials library here I'm going to search for rust. And which one shall we use? Let's try the fine. So this layer will pick up this if I just click on it. So there we go. So now we have a quite nice, rusted in places, hold in other places setup, and yeah, it looks pretty nice. But it can of course be better. It can always be better. So what we'll do in the next video is we'll start to refine it. We'll add some more effects and we'll get it looking properly good. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so let's rename our rust layer so I keep everything straight, and then we can start to look at making some changes. So first of all, our paint layer and our metal layer are extremely simple. So for the paint, actually the colour's wrong. I noticed that. So I've gone and got some references of military green, and I'm going to click on this colour here, use my dropper, and I'll pick one of these. Let's see which one. That one's not right. I think that one. There we go. So we could enhance this paint layer. We could do all sorts of things, But before I do that, what I want to do is save this, because this setup can be used on countless models, and there's no need to do it again. So what we're going to do is select all of our layers right down to the bottom, and then click on our folder, and that should add them all into the group, but it didn't. So I'm just going to select all my layers again, and I'll drag and drop that into there, and I'll call this cracked painted metal. There we go. So now I've done that, I can right click on this and create a smart material out of it, and you'll see it's changed to our smart material folder and added it in. So if I add it to another model, all I need to do is go into my paint layers or my metal layers and change them out to something appropriate. All the masks are there, all the other things are there, they're all ready to go. But this isn't the end of the process. The end of the process is making a complete model. But this particular piece or this particular bit up to here is all procedurally generated, and I don't want to include any painted effects in this. So what we're going to do in the next few videos, or a few sections rather, is enhance this with some painted masks and maybe some painted detail to get it to like a final position. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so I've just collapsed everything down, so I've closed the folders and made sure I've selected on the actual material layers, not the masks. So this is our setup. Anything we put above this is going to apply to the whole model unless we mask it. Anything within it is going to add kind of to our setup. So what I want to do, I've got my generic now, painted metal, but we can enhance it. So underneath the paint, of course, we can add another layer or more layers. And if I right click this and duplicate, what I'm going to do is just take the darkness, or the just darken up that a little bit, and I may take a little bit of the saturation out, and then I'm going to add a black mask to it. Just going to do a relatively simple one. So I'm going to right click, add a fill, and then in my textures I'm going to turn off the filter, and then let's look for a grunge. There we go. I want something that's not too white or not too black, so this grunge map looks good. Let's do that. And now we've got variation on our paint colours. I'm also, on the layer itself, going to increase the roughness a little bit so that that doesn't shine quite so much as the paint. I'd also like to put some spots over it, some height spots. So let's add a new fill layer and turn off all but height. Give it a small height value, a small positive height value, and then we'll get some find some spots. They might be a bit too big. There we go, this one here. And you'll see that that's a little bit extreme, so that's a case of turning down my value. Actually, I've just put it straight on the layer, haven't I? So that's foolish of me. Actually, we could do it like that. There's no reason not to. I can just take the layer blend down on the height channel. Yeah, it's not really working for me. That might be because it's too big. So my scale is 1 and my type is UV projection. I'm going to go to triplanar, and then we'll adjust the height to get a little bit of work going on in there. And yeah, I think that's terrible, actually. So let's go backwards a bit. Let's take that out of there and pop our L-Dodge blend layer up, and I'm going to do it with a mask, because that's the way I do it normally and I don't see any reason to change. So I'm going to add a fill to that mask, and then let's try this one. I'm going to turn the view to mask so I can see what is going on. That's okay. My layer should still be triplanar. I can adjust my scale, which is making no difference at all. So let's set that to 1, because the scale is now on the layer, on the fill layer we put in. So there we go. There we go. Some nice dense spots. We have some options here in terms of balance and contrast. I'm going to take the contrast up because I only want really kind of quite sparse spots, and I'm going to take the balance down until I just get the high points. So let's have a look at that, see how that comes out. So let's go to the material view and then turn it off and on, off and on, and it's doing nothing because I turn the height right down. There we go, that's what I want. So these are positive spots rather than the negatives where we're going in and exposing the metal. Okay, so that's that. Sorry about the mix-ups there. Hope you I hope you followed on or followed along. So also on this, I want to put some text on here, something that was painted onto the metal. So I need to put that on the paint layer. So let's add a paint layer in, and then in our alphas, if I type in font, it will give me a bunch of things that I can change out. Now these ones are generally where it says substance, I can exchange that text for something else. So I'm going to pick this one, and let's just put some kit box. That will do. Now I can make that much bigger. Go to my material, take the filter off, and let's use the plastic again, plastic matte. I'm going to take the colour and make it dark grey, and we'll also take the roughness off a bit so that it's a bit shinier than the original paint. Okay, so one thing here is I've got to the point where I can't really change my brush size anymore, and that could well be because my mode is wrong. Let me go up to it till I find it. Size, space, alignment. It's the alignment. So the alignment is currently tangent warp. So if I paint along a corner, it's going to paint around that corner. If I do that there, you'll see one side it's got kit on it and the other side it's got box. But if I change this mode to say UV, it's going to paint on the UV, and that can be really helpful to keep it flat. And also I've got the size space, and if I take that to texture, yeah, I've really got much more kind of space to work in. So if I paint that on there, we should see that it's blending in with the paint layer, but the wear is still there, and it's still coming through and giving us our rust and so on and so forth. There we go. Okay, so as long as you're happy with that, you don't want to take it any further, feel free. But I want to take it one step further, and that's put dirt over everything. So whether it be exposed, whether it be paint, whether it be, you know, text, whether it be whatever, I want to add a layer of dirt to bind all of our different texture areas together. So we'll do that in the next section, and I'll talk to you then. Okay, so now I can collapse my whole folder structure, and we'll add a piece over the top of it. So you see all the normals and all the height is coming through, and that's perfectly normal, but you might not want to at this point in time. So if you don't, then think back to earlier in the tutorial where we overwrote the normal layer. It's the same process for overwriting the height information. But for this one, let's add in a black mask, and then we'll add a generator to this, and to that generator we'll use the mask editor. So I want this to sit on the ground, so let's go down here and take our curvature opacity off and go down to our position gradient and turn that right up. So this is opposite as it generally is, so we'll invert it, and then we'll adjust our balance and contrast a bit just to get it on the bottom. There we go. So that's going to give us a kind of a general darkness on the bottom, and you know, we can adjust that with our layer system here, or our layer. So I don't want to change height or metal or any of those. I may want to change color and roughness. Roughness I want to increase, and the color, let's go a little darker. So you can go really dark on it because it's not coming fully through, but it should be making a nice difference to us. So if we turn this layer off, you'll see the difference it does make, and it is actually, you know, giving us some nice, you know, darkness on the bottom. And if I turn that even further up, especially if we look at the roughness map, we should see that it's much rougher on the bottom. There we go. And again, you might have to overcharge your values because the mask is quite grey. It's not a fully black and white mask. Let's go and have a look at material. There we go. And if I move the light around, we should get some good stuff from that. So if you press the shift button and then the right mouse and just click and hold and rotate around, you'll see that it it moves the light in the scene and get it to a nice angle, you know, so you can see what your texture looks like from different angles. There we go. Okay, so let's build on top of that a little bit more. So I'll have another layer with the black mask, and this time we'll use a generator, and we'll just use the general dirt. So this has put a general dirt over everything, including the edges, and we can adjust that by sliding our sliders. So I don't really want it on the edges, so let's adjust the mask until we go out. So edge masking I've set to 1. The grunge scale I'm going to bring down because it's too much at the minute. There we go, that's a much more kind of splattery look. And we can adjust the contrast up and down to get more specific kind of patches, and we can adjust the dirt level up and down to get more or less of what we want. So again, back onto the layer, I'm going to turn off my bits that I don't want. I'm going to increase the roughness at those points, and we're going to increase the colour. So you'll see that when I'm going black here, because my mask is much more black and white, it's coming in very, very strongly. So let's just adjust that down to get a more subtle look. And I think actually I want to put some colour into this, so not just grey. So let's move that over. You see it goes red there, and then I'll move my colour slider so it's more kind of dirt, dust, organic, browny kind of colour, and just move it around till it gets to where you want it. There we go. So now you can see very clearly that those spots of dirt there, if I turn it off, are really kind of affecting the overall roughness of the texture, and that's good. It's changing the metal and it's changing the paint, so in that way it brings it together for your brain. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I think we're done. So I hope you enjoyed that particular tutorial, and yeah, I hope very much to talk to you in another set. So I'll talk to you again soon.